Printables. Molly Lou Melon.
Molly Lou Mellon stood just taller than her dog and was the shortest girl in the first grade. She didn't mind. Her grandma had told her, "Walk as proudly as you can and the world will look up to you." So she did. Molly Lou Mellon had buck teeth that stuck out so far she could stack pennies on them. She didn't mind. Her grandma had told her, "Smile big and the world will smile right alongside you." So she did. Molly Lou Mellon had a voice that sounded like a bullfrog being squeezed by a boa constrictor. She didn't mind. Her grandma had told her, "Sing out clear and strong and the world will cry tears of joy." So she did. Molly Lou Mellon was often fumble-fingered. She didn't mind. Her grandma had told her, "Believe in yourself and the world will believe in you too." So she did. Then Molly Lou Mellon moved to a new town. She had to say goodbye to her grandma and all of her friends. And start in a new school. On the first day of school, Ronald Durkin called her Shrimpo in gym class. When the game started, Molly Lou Mellon caught the football, ran under the legs of Ronald Durkin, and scored a touchdown. All the children thought, "Wow, she's good." And Ronald Durkin felt very foolish. On the second day of school, Ronald Durkin called her Bucky Tooth Beaver. Molly Lou Mellon took out her pennies, stacked 10 high on her teeth, and smiled as big as day. All the children smiled with glee, and Ronald Durkin felt very foolish. On the third day of school, Ronald Durkin said, "You sound like a sick duck, honk honk." Molly Lou Mellon sang out, "Quack," so clear and strong that it made Ronald Durkin somersault backwards, hit his head, and had to go to the nurse. All the children cried with joy to be free of Ronald Durkin for the rest of the afternoon. And Ronald Durkin felt very foolish. On the fourth day of school, Ronald Durkin said that she'd made the snowflake all wrong. But Molly Lou Mellon opened up her paper and revealed the most beautiful snowflake of all. All the children oohed and awed, even Ronald. On the fifth day of school, Ronald Durkin brought Molly Lou Mellon a stacking penny for her tooth and smiled at her. That night, Molly Lou Mellon took out a pencil and paper and wrote a letter to her grandma. "Dear Grandma, I wanted to tell you that everything you told me was exactly right. Love, Molly Lou Mellon." All right, y'all, let's get ready to read. "I love your picture, Stinky Face," said Mama. "But I had a question." "Mama, what if I wanted to draw the most special, most exciting picture ever?" Then I would get out all your paints and markers and find you a great big piece of paper, and I would tell you, you can do it, stinky face. But Mama, what if instead of drawing, I folded the paper to make a giant paper airplane? What if I wanted to throw the craziest, highest, longest flying paper airplane toss ever? Then I would race you to the top of the highest mountain so I could watch you throw your awesome airplane, and I would yell from the mountaintop, "You can do it, stinky face!" But, Mama, what if my airplane soared all the way to the seashore and landed in the sand? And when I went to go get it, I decided to build the fanciest, sandiest sandcastle ever. Then I would plop your beach hat on your head and cover you with sunscreen. And as you dig and dumped and molded and scooped, I would cheer, "You can do it, stinky face!" But Mama, what if some kids were flying a kite at the beach and they didn't see my sandcastle and they ran all over it? What if they were so sorry that they let me fly their kite and I really wanted to, only I was afraid to try? Then I'd remind you to tell them thank you for sharing their kite, and we'd do our secret magic courage handshake so you wouldn't be afraid anymore. And I'd whisper, "You can do it, stinky face." But Mama, what if I was flying the kite and a big wind lifted me and the kite way up in the sky, and I had to hang on like crazy until a helicopter came to rescue me? Then I'd be very scared for you. But I know how strong and brave you are, so I'd shout up into the sky, "You can do it, stinky face, I know you can." But Mama, what if I got into the helicopter only the pilot had fainted from seeing a kid hanging in the sky like that, so I had to fly the helicopter all by myself? Then I would be very nervous, but I know how smart you are, so I'd dial up the helicopter's special radio and I'd say, "Come in, stinky face. Mama here. Do you read me, Captain? You can do it. Over and out." But Mama, what if I landed the helicopter on top of our house and the only way down from the roof was on the hook of a giant crawler crane? What if the boom got stuck halfway down? Then I would open this window and reach out and grab you off that hook. I'd swing you by your arms right onto the bed with the biggest, bounciest bounce ever. But Mama, bouncing on the bed is not allowed. No, it's not. But for such a special occasion, do you know what I would say? What, Mama? You can do it, stinky face. Guys, I hope you enjoyed that story. I'll see you next time. Don't forget to subscribe and like on our channel for more stories. Bye. Camilla Cream loved lima beans, but she never ate them. All of her friends hated lima beans, and she wanted to fit in. Camilla was always worried about what other people thought of her. Today, she was fretting even more than usual. It was the first day of school, and she couldn't decide what to wear. There were so many people to impress. She tried on 42 outfits, but none seemed quite right. She put on a pretty red dress and looked in the mirror. Then she screamed. Her mother ran into the room and she screamed too. "Oh my heavens," she cried. "You're completely covered with stripes." This was certainly true. Camilla was striped from head to toe. She looked like a rainbow. Mrs. Cream felt Camilla's forehead. "Do you feel all right?" she asked. "I feel fine," Camilla answered, "but just look at me." You get back in bed this instant, her mother ordered. You're not going to school today. Camilla was relieved. She didn't want to miss the first day of school, but she was afraid of what the other kids would say, and she had no idea what to wear with those crazy stripes. That afternoon, Dr. Bumble came to examine Camilla. Most extraordinary, he exclaimed. I've never seen anything like it. Are you having any coughing, sneezing, runny nose, aches, pains, chills, hot flashes, dizziness, drowsiness, shortness of breath, or uncontrollable twitching? No, Camilla told him. I feel fine. Well then, Dr. Bumble said, turning to Mrs. Cream, I don't see any reason why she shouldn't go to school tomorrow. Here's some ointment that should help clear up those stripes in a few days. If it doesn't, you know where to reach me. And off he went. The next day was a disaster. Everyone at school laughed at Camilla. They called her Camilla Crayon and Night of the Living Lollipop. She tried her best to act as if everything were normal, but when the class said the Pledge of Allegiance, her stripes turned red, white, and blue, and she broke out in stars. The other kids thought this was great. One yelled out, Let's see some purple polka dots. Sure enough, Camilla turned all purple polka dotty. Someone else shouted, Checkerboard! And a pattern of squares covered her skin. Soon everyone was calling out different shapes and colors, and poor Camilla was changing faster than you can change channels on a TV. That night, Mr. Harms, the school principal, called. I'm sorry, Mrs. Cream, he said. I'm going to have to ask you to keep Camilla home from school. She's just too much of a distraction, and I've been getting calls from the other parents. They're afraid those stripes may be contagious. Camilla was so embarrassed. She couldn't believe that 2 days ago everyone liked her. Now nobody wanted to be in the same room with her. Her father tried to make her feel better. Is there anything I can get you, sweetheart? He asked. No, thank you, sighed Camilla. What she really wanted was a nice plate of lima beans, but she had been laughed at enough for one day. Well, yes, I see, Dr. Bumble mumbled when Mr. Cream phoned the next day. I think I'd better bring in the specialist. We'll be right over. About an hour later, Dr. Bumble arrived with 4 people in long white coats. He introduced them to the Creams. This is Dr. Grop, Dr. Sponge, Dr. Cricket, and Dr. Young. Then the specialist went to work on Camilla. They squeezed and jabbed, tapped and tested. It was very uncomfortable. Well, it's not the mumps, concluded Dr. Grupp. Or the measles, said Dr. Sponge. Definitely not chicken pox, put in Dr. Cricket. Or sunburn, said Dr. Young. Try these, said the specialist. They each handed her a bottle filled with different colored pills. Take one of each before bed, said Dr. Grupp. Then they filed out of the front door, followed by Dr. Bumble. That night, Camilla took her medicine. It was awful. When she woke up the next morning, she did feel different, but when she got dressed, her clothes didn't fit right. She looked in the mirror, and there, staring back at her, was a giant multicolored pill with her face on it. Dr. Bumble rushed over as soon as Miss Cream called, but this time, instead of the specialists, he brought the experts. Dr. Gord and Dr. Mellon were the finest scientific minds in the land. Once again, Camilla was poked and prodded, looked at and listened to. The experts wrote down lots of numbers. Then they huddled together and whispered. Dr. Gord finally spoke. It might be a virus, he announced with authority. Suddenly, fuzzy little virus balls appeared all over Camilla. Or possibly some form of bacteria, said Mr. Mellon. Out popped squiggly little bacteria tails. Or it could be a fungus, added Dr. Gord. Instantly, Camilla was covered with different colored fungus blotches. The experts looked at Camilla, then at each other. We need to go over these numbers again back at the lab, Dr. Gord explained. We'll call you when we know something. But the experts didn't have a clue. much less a cure. By now, the TV news had found out about Camilla. Reporters from every channel were outside her house telling the story of the bizarre case of the incredible changing kid. Soon, a huge crowd was camped out on the front lawn. The Creams were swamped with all kinds of remedies from psychologists, allergists, herbalists, nutritionists, psychics, an old medicine man, a guru, and even a veterinarian. Each so-called cure only added to poor Camilla's strange appearance until it was hard to even recognize her. She sprouted roots and berries and crystals and feathers and a long furry tail, but nothing worked. One day, a woman who called herself an environmental therapist claimed she could cure Camilla. "Close your eyes," she said. "Breathe deeply and become one with your room." "I wish you hadn't said that," Camilla groaned. Slowly, she started to melt into the walls of her room. Her bed became her mouth, her nose was a dresser, and 2 paintings were her eyes. The therapist screamed and ran from the house. "What are we going to do?" cried Mrs. Cream. "It just keeps getting worse and worse," she began to sob. At that moment, Mr. Cream heard a quiet little knock at the front door. He opened it, and there stood an old woman who was just as plump and sweet as a strawberry. "Excuse me," she said brightly, "but I think I can help." She went into Camilla's room and looked around. "My goodness," she said with a shake of her head. "What we have here is a bad case of stripes. One of the worst I've ever seen." She pulled a container of small green beans from her bag. "Here," she said, "these might do the trick." "Are those magic beans?" asked Miss Cream. "Oh my, no," replied the kind old woman. "There's no such thing. These are just plain old lima beans. I'll bet you'd like some, wouldn't you?" she asked Camilla. Camilla wanted a big heaping plateful of lima beans more than just about anything, but she was still afraid to admit it. "Yuck," she said. "No one likes lima beans, especially me." "Oh dear," the old woman said sadly. "I guess I was wrong about you." She put the beans back in her bag and started toward the door. Camilla watched the old woman walk away. Those beans would taste so good, and being laughed at for eating them was nothing compared to what she'd been going through. She finally couldn't stand it. "Wait," she cried. "The truth is, I really love lima beans." "I thought so," the old woman said with a smile. She took a handful of beans and popped them into Camilla's mouth. "Mmm," said Camilla. Suddenly, the branches, feathers, and squiggly tails began to disappear. Then the whole room swirled around. When it stopped, there stood Camilla, and everything was back to normal. "I'm cured," she shouted. "Yes," said the old woman. "I knew the real you was in there somewhere." She patted Camilla on the head. Then she went outside and vanished into the crowd. Afterward, Camilla wasn't quite the same. Some of the kids at school said she was weird, but she didn't care a bit. She ate all the lima beans she wanted, and she never had even a touch of stripes again.
Welcome to Shon's Storytime videos for kids every day of the week. Today's story is But I Am a Cat by Jamie Marie Edwards.
Mr. Cat's sleepy eyes slowly opened as he felt the warmth of the sun's rays stream into the living room. He rolled to the left and then to the right, allowing the rays to dance up and down his back. "It's morning again," he thought with a squint. Before leaving for his morning stroll, he lapped some water and nibbled some food from his bowl. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Mr. Cat then licked his paw and used it to wipe his face clean. He stretched his whole body and then sat in front of the open door, calculating his next move. A moment later, he darted outside. Off Mr. Cat went on his morning stroll. Mr. Cat strolled 3 blocks and then stopped. "I feel a little tired," he said with a yawn. He looked to the left and then to the right and saw a shady spot under a bench. What a perfect place to catch some Z's. He stretched his back, yawned again, and then curled up under the bench. Mr. Cat was fast asleep until his nap was interrupted by the pesky buzzing of Mrs. B. "Wake up, you lazy cat," she buzzed. "Don't you want to be like me? If you were like me, you could make sweet honey and pollinate the flowers. It's great to be me." "But I am a cat," he replied. "I'm not made to do that." As Mrs. B buzzed away, Mr. Cat wondered if life would be better if he were a bee. He yawned again and then drifted back to sleep. After his nap, Mr. Cat continued his stroll. He noticed Mrs. Duck and her ducklings wading swiftly down the lake. "Hello, Mr. Cat," she quacked. "Don't you want to be like me? If you were like me, you could have fun diving in and out of the water. It's great to be me." "But I am a cat," he replied. "I'm not made to do that." As Mrs. Duck and her ducklings swam away, Mr. Cat wondered if life would be better if he were a duck. Thirsty now, Mr. Cat stood by the edge of the lake and lapped some water. He saw Mrs. Turtle sunbathing on a log that was floating by. Beep, 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 beep. Mr. Cat was startled by the sound of a distant car horn and quickly scrambled up to the lowest branch of a nearby tree. "Hello, Mr. Scaredy Cat," Mrs. Turtle called out. "Don't you want to be like me? If you were like me, you would have a hard shell to protect your body. It's great to be me." Then Mrs. Turtle disappeared inside her shell. "But I am a cat," he replied. "I'm not made to do that." He watched as Mrs. Turtle played peekaboo, darting her head in and out of her shell. She seemed to be having a lot of fun. With a sigh, Mr. Cat wondered if life would be better if he were a turtle. "Cat got your tongue?" Mr. Bird chirped. "What seems to have captured your thoughts?" Mr. Cat looked around and finally saw Mr. Bird sitting on a branch, one tree over. Mr. Bird quickly took off, flapping his wings. He made a circle in the air and then glided back to the tree. "Don't you want to be like me?" Mr. Bird sang. "If you were like me, you could have the best of both worlds. You could walk on the grass and soar high above the trees. Flying south for the winter is always a treat. It's great to be me." "But I am a cat," he replied. "I'm not made to do that." As Mr. Bird flew away, Mr. Cat wondered if life would be better if he were a bird. Crack, crack, crack. "Ouch," Mr. Cat said. "What was that?" 3 little chips of wood had fallen from above, hitting him on the head. He looked up and saw Mr. Squirrel and 3 of his friends scurrying up and down the bark of the tree. "Sorry for that," Mr. Squirrel squeaked. "My friends and I are having fun playing tag in the tree. Don't you want to be like me? If you were like me, you would have eyes on the side of your face, and you could see to the left and the right without having to turn your head." "But I am a cat," he replied. "I am not made to do that." As Mr. Squirrel continued to chase his friends in the tree, Mr. Cat wondered if life would be better if he were a squirrel. Mr. Cat looked down and saw Mr. Caterpillar munching on a leaf. After he finished that leaf, he wormed his way across the branch and began munching on another leaf. "Don't you want to be like me?" Mr. Caterpillar said. "If you were like me, you could spin yourself into a cocoon and transform into a beautiful butterfly. I can't wait. One day I will have colorful wings. It's great to be me." "But I am a cat," he replied. "I am not made to do that." As Mr. Caterpillar continued munching on his leaf, Mr. Cat wondered if life would be better if he were a caterpillar. Mr. Cat walked across the branch, carefully avoiding Mr. Caterpillar, and climbed down the trunk of the tree. He continued his stroll and then stopped suddenly at the cry of a small voice. "Hey, watch it, Mr. Cat! You almost destroyed my home!" Mr. Cat looked down and saw Mrs. Ant marching in a straight line with her friends. The trail of ants carried morsels of food into their little hole and then marched back out to get some more. Mrs. Ant finally stopped to take a rest. "Mr. Cat, don't you want to be like me?" she asked. "If you were like me, you would be a great architect and could build your own home. It's great to be me." "But I am a cat," he replied. "I am not made to do that." As Mrs. Ant got back into line with the other ants, Mr. Cat wondered if life would be better if he were an ant. "I feel a little tired," Mr. Cat said with a big yawn. He looked to the left and then to the right and saw a shady spot under an oak tree. What a perfect place to catch some Z's. He stretched his back, yawned again, and then curled up in the shade of the tree. Mr. Cat was fast asleep until his nap was interrupted. "Watch out! Watch out!" a husky voice in the distance howled. Mr. Cat was almost clobbered by Mr. Dog's ball. Lazy cat, he said. "Were you taking another nap?" The closer Mr. Dog got, the more afraid Mr. Cat got. He quickly ran up the oak tree. "You don't have to be afraid of me," Mr. Dog yelped. "Right now, I'm having plenty of fun playing fetch with my favorite ball. So come down out of the tree." Mr. Cat stayed just where he was. "Don't you want to be like me?" Mr. Dog yapped. "If you were like me, you would be called man's best friend and you could do cool tricks. It's great to be me." "But I am a cat," he replied. "I'm not made to do that." As Mr. Dog ran off to continue playing with his favorite ball, Mr. Cat came down from the tree and curled up in the shade to resume his nap. Before drifting off, Mr. Cat wondered if life would be better if he were a dog. During his nap, Mr. Cat dreamt he was a bee and was able to make sweet honey and pollinate beautiful flowers. Then he dreamt how refreshing it would be if he were a duck and able to dive in and out of the coolness of the lake. Then he smiled in his sleep as he dreamt about being able to play peekaboo like a turtle. Then he dreamt of soaring across the big blue sky with lots of friends, just like a bird. Then he dreamt of being a squirrel and being able to see to his left and his right without having to turn his head. Then he dreamt of being a caterpillar. How great it would be to slither and slide and then one day turn into a colorful butterfly. Then he dreamt of being an ant, marching along with all of the other world's smallest architects. Lastly, he dreamt of being man's best friend and doing cool tricks and getting lots of treats. Mr. Cat finally woke up from his nap. He was still a cat. Yes, he was still a cat, he realized. A cat that napped whenever he needed to. A cat that climbed with perfect grace and balance. A cat that stretched and strolled. Mr. Cat purred, pleased to be a cat. "I am a cat," he said. "I was made to be that. It's great to be me." To all who choose to read this book, it's time to give princesses a second look. The Pineapple Kingdom has a story to share of a special young princess and a surprising affair. Princess Penelope Pineapple was her name, with brown eyes, pink cheeks, and pigtails of fame. The one thing more admired than her long flowy tresses was her closet full of tiaras and dazzling dresses. Penny was the daughter of the king and queen. Atop Pineapple Castle she could often be seen, with her brother Felipe and the royal cat, Miss Fuzzy Wiggles. What a silly name is that? A proper young lady, Penny could paint, sing, and dance. But did you know about her collection of pants? Crowns and gowns have their place, no doubt, but that's not all this girl was about. She loved to sparkle, loved ruffles too. But I wear pants, she said, because I've got things to do. Early each morning as the sun would rise, Penny got up to exercise. She'd pull on her yoga pants and a t-shirt, because a workout, of course, is no place for a skirt. Tending the garden was a very big job, growing tomatoes and corn on the cob. To feed those in need of a meal is my duty, said the princess in pants, paying no mind to beauty. A pilot in the Pineapple Air Command, she did high-flying tricks while guarding the land. In her sequin flight suit, Penny never was scared. She flipped and flew higher than others had dared. And Penny hosted the Pineapple Science Fair, a place for kids with ideas to share. With solar cars, robots, and cures for the sick, her lab coat and corduroys did just the trick. But sometimes Penny just liked to unwind, wearing comfy old jeans, the patched up kind. She'd read books or daydream or write a long letter to Great-Grandma Pineapple to make her feel better. Then came the night of the Pineapple Ball, the event of the season, come one, come all. Ladies and gents in their costumes so fine, sipping pineapple punch, oh how divine. Grand Lady Busy Boots would surely be there, with her wagging finger and her disapproving stare. Pants have no place on a lady, she'd say. That's how it has been and that's how it should stay. Penny gazed at her gowns all lined up in a row. If I can't wear pants, then I don't want to go. I love to dress up, just as pretty as can be, but underneath it all, I still have to be me. Once at the ball, Penny forgot all her troubles. The courtyard was brilliant with baubles and bubbles. As the crowds climbed down the palace staircase, none could imagine what would soon take place. For just at that moment, a terrible wail from high above, where a long furry tail could be seen hanging down from the tower's north wall. It was the royal kitty trying hard not to fall. "Miss Fuzzy!" screeched Penny. The music then stopped. Every eye turned upward, every jaw dropped. Kerplunk went the cat in the moat down below, her royal coat soaked from ear to toe. Prince Felipe cried out as he fell to his knees. "She cannot swim! Someone help her, please! I'd save her myself, but my suit would get wet. I'm not dressed to rescue the poor royal pet." Penny was ready, no need for preparing, to spring into action no matter what she was wearing. The crowd thought for sure in her gown she'd be sunk, but under her skirts were her pink swimming trunks. She dived into the water and swam toward the cat and rescued Miss Fuzzy in 5 seconds flat. Miss Fuzzy and Arm Penny swam back around, slipped on her shoes, and shook off her gown. She handed the cat to a grateful Prince P. In dresses or trunks, you're braver than me. The kingdom rejoiced and sang Penny's praises. The pineapple princess always amazes. Lady Busy Boots took the stage and grabbed the mic. From now on, princesses should wear whatever they like. We've all learned a lesson from Penny today. Sometimes our dresses can get in the way. The Pineapple Kingdom proudly agreed. We must be ourselves as the lady decreed. The princess helped when no one else could. She saved the day just like a good royal should. Penny smiled and said as she started to dance, "It's what princesses do. This is why we wear pants." She sat on Rooster's birthday cake. Oh